Off with a roll call of members. Andy Bailey.
Here.
Grant Mueller is absent. Stacy Pettigo.
Here.
Scott Hespensberger is absent. Chester Bankus.
Here.
Present. Myself, Liz Stitzel, and Kat Bell are present, as well as Attorney Jay Moore.
Barely.
Barely. And we're just about giving up on you. All right, so with that, the first item of business is appointment of officers, which may be kind of tricky because there's only 3 of you today. So I guess we have 2 options. If you guys want to proceed with assignment of officers, I suppose you can. If you want to try to wait until you have a quorum, then maybe you need to vote to continue for this meeting with your previous officers or whatever, somehow indicate what you're going to do.
Well, I
so you
think
can
they
run the
hold,
meeting.
you continue to hold office until you're replaced.
Yeah, I think so too.
So I think if we do nothing,
Then
stay the
Andy would
same.
run the meeting for today.
yeah.
So it's up to you guys which way you want to handle that with 3 present.
I think we just remain the way we are.
And I would be quite honest with you. I could say that we could vote on it if you guys are fine with that.
Or you want to just adopt the same
Yeah,
officers
just
for next
adopt the
year?
same
Yeah, you should do it at the beginning of each year. So if you guys are comfortable with that and you just want to,
Is Grant?
Yeah,
Grant, well,
yeah. I talked to Grant
Okay,
today
great,
just
that's fine.
about because he wasn't be
That's-
there. I'm like, well, since you're not going to be there, we're going to make you president. But I'm not going to do that.
so if one of you would just say in your motion who president, vice president, secretary will be,
Yeah.
you can do them all as one vote.
Okay, I move to make Andrew Bailey president, Grant Mueller vice president, and Stacy Pettigo secretary.
I'll second that motion.
And my pen died.
When you're ready, I'll take a roll call vote.
Andy was my motion, and who was my second?
Chester.
Okay, Andy Bailey,
Aye.
Stacy Pettigo,
Yes.
and Chester Bankus.
Aye.
All right, now you can carry on, all yours.
All right. So
Yeah,
now we
it's
need
just
to approve
to
the
carry
minutes
on
from the
from
previous meeting. Any
Make a motion.
corrections?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Here, pass that down. Now it's time for the public hearings. Start today with application CC dash 2024 dash 00001. That's docket number 01 dash 24 dash SE. It's a petition for Marcialo Yanis and Maria Salinas, and it's they're asking for a special exception. Can you take us through the staff report, please?
I can. It's had the unique distinction of being the very first thing to be filed and paid for this year. So, and, this is a request for a special exception for an apartment within or above a non-residential or commercial structure. This site is actually located south of town, on the west side of State Road 39. It's a 1.967, almost 2-acre lot between West 200 South and West Antioch Road in Jackson Township. There's an existing commercial building on the lot, and it does have an existing dwelling within it. That dwelling has a legal non-conforming status, which means it predated the ordinance, and as long as nothing happens to it, it's allowed to continue. But if something were to happen to it, it would not be guaranteed to be allowed to be rebuilt or continue. So the petitioners would like to reside in that dwelling themselves while operating an event center in the commercial portion of the building. The petitioners are requesting a special exception to continue the dwelling, but as a legal use, so that if it ever does take substantial damage, it will be able to be rebuilt as an approved use without having some kind of crisis coming before the board at that time, instead of losing its non-conforming status and then having to work their way through that. So this BZA special exception is needed to protect the use if, in the event that there was damage that might occur. So there's some pictures there on the second page, and I would note for those of you that are familiar with this site, the parking lot and that arrangement, that's all been done fairly recently and looks super nice on the front of the building. The apartment is in the front of the building, and there's kind of open space on the back side inside. So there's a set of findings that we need to examine in order to grant a special exception use. First, that the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located and the general regulations of the ordinance. So a apartment in a non-residential or commercial structure, which is use 3.11 on table A, is a special exception in the B4 district. And I think I skipped that part, but this is general business, and it's surrounded by general business, but then across the road, there's some low-density residential, and then there's some ag back behind the business district, so it's a little bit of a mixed-use area. If the board grants the special exception, then this use would conform to the district provisions. Second, the proposed use shall not involve an element or cause a condition that's dangerous, injurious, or noxious to property or persons, and shall comply with the performance standards herein. So this building's already in existence, the dwelling's already in existence. Since the building already contains the residential unit and the commercial use is changing to a different one, a state design release will be needed as part of the petitioner's process, and they're working their way through that with the state. Current building codes will have to be met in any reconstruction process that takes place with either the dwelling or the event center. The health department has reported that there's a septic system currently on site approved for the dwelling, which is what you're hearing tonight. There is further approval that they're having to go through for the commercial use. However, that does not require hearing from you this evening. So the petitioners are working through options for that use, and they intend to comply with the ordinance. Third, the proposed use shall be sited, oriented, and landscaped so the relationship of its buildings and grounds to adjacent buildings and properties does not impair health, safety, or comfort, nor adversely affect values of adjacent properties. So this existing dwelling is in the existing building. There's no changes proposed to the exterior footprint. There's plenty of room for the required 2 off-street parking spaces, so the finding would appear to be met. 4, the proposed use will produce an total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the environment of the neighborhood. Again, the dwelling's existing. We don't actually know how long it's been in existence, but it does predate the ordinance. Adjacent to the south of the dwelling, there's 3 single-family dwellings that are actually all legal non-conforming. And there's no greater intensity with this apartment than what there is from those dwellings. And there's restaurant and construction uses nearby to the north. Furthermore, as far as staff is aware, there's never been a logged complaint about the existing dwelling in this building when it was formerly owned by people that did not live on site and used it as a rental. And finally, the proposed use shall organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movement on adjacent streets. So there is space for parking available for the dwelling in the front for the 2 spaces. Since it is accessed from State Road 39, staff did reach out to NDOT, and Craig Carpenter, the permit investigator for NDOT, noted that as long as there are no changes or updates done to the existing accesses, then no permits are required from their department. And then the proposed use shall promote the objectives of the ordinance, be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So the 2012 comprehensive plan land use goal 2 says to promote the development of residential areas with high quality housing in a variety of types, styles, and densities. And then additionally, the site falls within the urban growth area boundary for Frankfort, and it's noted in the comp plan that Jackson Township is an area designated for roadside businesses and low-density residential uses. So subject to board approval, legalizing this use does appear to support those goals. Consequently, staff would recommend to approve the special exception request.
Good. Thank you, Liz. Would the petitioner have anything to add to the staff report? Yeah. Is there anybody else that'd like to speak on this case? Okay. Entertain some board discussion.
Seems like the apartment's already there. It's been used. Fits in with the neighborhood. It seems like it's appropriate.
Yeah, I don't have any problems with it at all. Just seems like they're just trying to shore up a what if, so.
And I wish, as an administrator, I wish more people, when we tell them they have something legal to non-conforming, would take the initiative to get it into a legal status when there isn't an emergency, because it really does stink when you have somebody with a fire or who takes a loss from like a tornado or something, and then you have to tell them, sorry, like this isn't going to be a quick process, and it might not even be doable at all, and now there's all this emotion. So when it's dealt with this way, then
It's great.
it averts any kind of crisis.
Well, it also helps with their insurance too, in the sense that the insurance company doesn't like to insure, and sometimes you cannot get insurance for a non-conforming use, because if there's a 50% destruction or a 25% destruction,
You might not be able to.
you may not be able, depending on what your ordinance says, and I think ours.
I think ours is 50, but
I
I
think ours
wouldn't
is
stake
50,
my life
but-
on it.
But,
But that's of assessed value, not of value of the structure. So if you figure in today's economy, if a building is valued at $100,000, which that'd be a pretty big valuation for county valuation, well, then if the work to repair it costs $50,000, you're out of that category and you can't repair it, and you may have to tear it down. Well, just think in your head what it takes to spend $50,000 on construction today. It's
Yeah.
not much. Like, you get there really fast.
Yeah. So that's why it really is wise what these people are doing in terms of getting it legalized, because then they can get insurance coverage that would pay for replacement cost
Sure.
if they wanted to.
Sure. Seems very smart.
Okay. I'll move. I move to approve the application of CC-2024-0001, docket number 01-24-SC, according to the findings in the staff report, which were incorporated in the motion by reference.
Second.
Roll call vote when you get a chance, Liz.
Andy Bailey?
Yes.
Stacy Pedigo?
Yes.
Chester Bankus?
Yes.
Okay, so the special exception legalizing the apartment is approved 3-0.
Awesome. Let's go on to the next one. So this is the application CC 2024-00002, docket number 02-24-VA, petition by Marcelo Yanis and Maria Salinas, and they're requesting approval for a variance to waive some gravel in a lot.
So again, as you noted, this is again the same site as the first one, so I'll save us a little bit of orientation there. But now we're going to shift gears. Instead of discussing the apartment, we're going to discuss the commercial use. So the petitioner would like to have a reception hall, an event area in the commercial part of the building. That is a permitted use in the zoning district, so the use itself doesn't have to come before the board. And as we just approved, there's also a dwelling there. The petitioner, whenever you change a use, all the current standards of the ordinance kind of kick in. So when you get into the parking standards, they would have to have more than 15 spaces, and then those would have to be paved. So the petitioner is actually requesting a variance to allow them to leave the rear parking area gravel as it is now, instead of paving it. They did actually pave, as you saw in the pictures in the last staff report, the front parking area really nicely, and then put in some curbing to kind of delineate so you don't have like people driving in circles through it. That's from section 308.06B, the Unified Development Ordinance. And that front area that's newly paved, it does provide the required handicap parking spaces that are ADA compliant. So sometimes when we talk about these variances, we have to put a condition requiring them to have paved areas for ADA. The reason you're not going to see that mentioned in this staff report is because that is already provided in a compliant way in a paved area that goes to the building. So that doesn't come into play in the back. So there's 3 findings that have to exist in order to grant a variance. First, that the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. So this rear parking lot, much like the apartment, is existing. It's also contiguous and continuous with another existing gravel parking lot on the adjacent property that kind of was all built and developed like it was a single lot, even though it's technically not. Since it is contiguous, they actually have a shared access, and it would seem to create kind of a challenging maintenance situation. You know, it might actually be more injurious to try to pave it than to not to, because half the drive would be paved, half the drive, you know, the south side would be paved, the north side would be gravel, you know, and you'd have this weird scenario going up, and change of surface. Two, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. So this site is in a rural setting, and this area the variance regards is not readily seen from the road to the front or the passing traffic that's on the highway. So the gravel lot is of limited visibility, and with board approval, it would not appear to affect the surrounding area in an adverse manner. Additionally, the lot has been in this location as a gravel lot since at least 1972, and no complaints have been received about the gravel on this or the neighboring lot, causing any harm or issues with the neighboring residences or anyone else around. So there doesn't seem to be a new situation being caused here, just a continuation of an existing situation with the new use. And finally, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. So every property in this run actually already has gravel drives and lots, other than the front of this property where it's been paved. There's not a lot of paving in this area. If the petition site is required to be paved, it would create issues given the interconnectedness, like I mentioned before, with the adjacent and contiguous properties gravel lot and the portion of the shared access that would remain gravel, creating both hazards in surface, but also differences in how it would wear and handle under vehicles. So consequently, staff recommends approval of the variance.
Does the petitioner have anything that they'd like to add on this one? Okay. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to add? Board discussion?
Again, it seems like a no-brainer. It's a pretty easy one to
Yeah.
recommend. I'd like to go ahead, if you entertain a motion. I'll make a motion to approve
Yeah, before that it was.
application CC 2024-00002, docket 02-24-VA, according to the findings of the staff report, which were incorporated in motion by reference.
You know, the only question I had was whether you have a problem with parking on the other person's property since it's not delineated. But, you know, for years, it was an auction house, and they probably had periodic.
They had, my understanding is
It
they
was
had.
like 2 nights a week,
Yeah.
or once a month.
My understanding was they
once a
had
week.
permission to, you know,
Yeah.
to work with the neighboring property owner on that, previously. Not saying that's still the situation.
But anyway, that's, you know, but if that becomes a problem, you can always
Well, for us, there's a
delineate
certain,
it.
there's a certain number of parking spots they have to provide, either on the site or with permission shown adjacent. Once that number of parking spots is provided, then legally, we don't have to make them go further, so it would
Yeah.
become a civil issue if the neighboring property owner
If you-
felt
if
that
they-
there wasn't, the arrangement, whatever it was, wasn't being followed. So we'll only get involved to the extent that they have to provide what's
Yeah,
required as we review the permitting for the
that's true.
event
Second.
center.
I moved Chester moved, I seconded the approval. A roll call vote when you get a chance, Liz.
Andy Bailey?
Yes.
Stacy Pedigo?
Yes.
Chester Benkus?
Yes.
So
Okay.
passed.
Yep, so, you're on to administrative, showing that you meet the rules and what you gotta do to be able to get your permits.
Thank you. You guys are welcome to stay or take off, whatever you guys want to do. All right.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye. Okay, so now, once they get their state designs.
Yep.
All right, we got one more on the docket for public hearings. Application CC 2024-00005, docket number 03-24-VA. It's a petition of Cheryl Kellett and they're asking for approval of a variance. Can you take us through the staff report, please?
I can. So this is up in the unincorporated town of Forest at 5964 North 930 East. And this is a request for a setback variance for an accessory non-permanent structure, or in common language, a shed, to sit 0 foot from the rear or the west property line. And this site, the property is on the west side of 930 East. The petitioner had placed this structure on the property without obtaining a permit, and we received a complaint. In fact, just to make it clear, we received a lot of complaints about a lot of sites in Forest, because there just seems to be right now some complaints and enforcement, and then people kind of going through and driving and looking for violations. So I would emphasize that these particular petitioners were not being uniquely rebellious. They just sort of, by chance, happened to violate the ordinance and get caught. There were a lot of complaints that weren't validated by actual violations, and then there were some like this one where there turned out to be a violation. So we've been working to get those resolved and enforced. So in this case, as soon as he was made aware of it, he came in right away wanting to solve the problem. When we started working through the permitting process, we realized that the structure was able to meet the front setback, but there was no way to meet the rear setback once he moved it back, because originally it was too close to the road. And so after some discussion, the petitioner opted to request a variance. This property is kind of unique. You can kind of see in the zoning map, it's sort of triangularly shaped, and the railroad right-of-way runs along the back of it. In fact, the petitioners are using part of that right-of-way, which that's between them and the railroad, but it's kind of easy to see how they wouldn't necessarily expect to have that restriction in terms of what it feels like on the day-to-day basis, even though that's not their property. The petitioner does maintain some of the rail property to keep kind of the overgrowth and other things back. On the second page, you can see a little bit clearer picture that just sort of shows you where those property lines are, where the structure location is, and then where the petitioner's house is sitting. And then there's a picture that shows you the shed sitting on the property looking from 930 East. So there's 3 findings, again, that have to exist to grant a variance. First is that the approval will not be injurious to public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. So this does not appear to create an injurious situation. The surrounding use is completely the petitioner's own property, and the 0 setback being requested is along the railroad property, and well, that is still railroad property, and I know the railroad's been in communication with Howard County about potentially selling it, and then with another user, maybe for light rail. It is not currently active track, so it's not something where there's a use coming right up to the property line on the other side. All the other setbacks were measured by staff and are able to be met, so that rear is the only issue. 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. So this new structure does have a similar appearance to other structures in the area. It would appear to be consistent. Because of the configuration of the petitioner's site, there's really not many other options, and staff did try to look and suggest some alternatives, but there were very rational reasons due to access and the triangular shape. I mean, we couldn't tell him he could put it on the railroad properties, so when you look at where his property lines are, there's really not much space available. So this really was the only option to attempt to substantively meet setbacks. And no matter where he would have put it, even if he'd moved it back to the other side somewhere, he still would have needed a variance, just would have been a different variance. So that leads us to the third point, which is the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. If the zoning ordinance is applied strictly, the structure will be physically unable to meet setbacks on the parcels that the petitioner owns because of their configuration. This particular location resulted in the least number of variances of the least severity, so it's only the rear setback, but there does appear to be a practical difficulty if the premise is that some storage is desirable. Consequently, staff recommends to approve the variance request.
Thank you, Liz. Does petitioner have anything to add? Okay. Nobody else in the room except for Aaron. Any board discussion? I don't see anything. I mean, we're trying to make it so that these guys can keep their sheds, so.
So it's kind of like the best of the bad situation.
Yeah,
Tourist.
but All right, I'll make a motion.
All right.
I move to approve the application number CC 2024-0005, docket number 03-24-VA, according to the findings of the staff report, which were incorporated in this motion by reference.
I would be glad to second that motion.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a roll call vote when you're ready, Liz.
Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Stacy Pedigo,
Yes.
and Chester Bankus.
Yes.
All right, 3-0, you will finally be able to come in and get your permit and get yourselves in compliance. So appreciate your cooperation and your patience with working through the process, given that you didn't expect the chain of events that occurred.
All the places I live, a movable structure, we didn't have to have permits.
Yeah.
Yep,
It just really caught me off guard, and then when I seen 201, I'm like over like 345, so.
yep, yeah, we used to be all of them, but then a few years ago, we did change it to where that under 200, you don't. But you still would have to meet setbacks, so it wouldn't necessarily,
And my
so.
house don't even meet the setback. Railroad comes back in the corner of my house. So now we can have to get permit?
Yeah,
or-
I'll give you a call tomorrow as soon as I get back in. Give me a few minutes in the morning because I did get it sent over late today, for a waiver from the Drainage Board of Go. I had to do that. It's a formality. So as long as I can make sure that's on there, then yeah, I'll give you a call and let you know
Okay.
the price of it and everything.
All right.
Okay?
And if I don't answer, leave me a message, 'cause we got it, we took the day off, we thought it was gonna be ice, but it was just water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indiana,
I'm sure the schools feel as stupid as I do, they get everybody no ice on the road, but it is. But then, yeah, then we can get up, meet with you and
Okay.
take care of.
Sure.
Thanks,
All
guys.
righty.
Hey, thank
Thank
you.
you, guys. All right.
All right. Do we have any new business?
we really don't, other than, at some point here in the next couple of months, I'm gonna try to bring the new building inspector just to introduce him, so you have a face to go with a name. And there will be hearings and occasions when he may have a relevant opinion to weigh in, or you may ask for his opinion. But I'm trying to I'm trying to get him around all the legislative bodies, so I'm trying to not end up giving him like 9 night meetings in 1 month, as he's also trying to get his certifications. So I'm gonna get him to area plan first, since we work for them, and then I'm gonna try to get him to you guys. Maybe later in February, if not, then it'll be March at the latest, and then I've got to get the towns all in there too, so, but to let you know, we'll do that, and things seem to be going well, in terms of how he's doing. He's kind of ahead of where I would expect somebody to be in terms of, he's real close to being ready to test, I think, for his residential inspector certification. But it helps that he's already an ICC certified elevator inspector, so he's already familiar with how codes lay themselves out and with how those tests are formatted. It's just learning residential material instead of commercial or elevator. So I'm hopeful that in the next week or two, we will have the certification and starting to phase him into the field, so.
Good. Very good.
For February, we do already have one filing, and it might be a little, little crazy, but hopefully we'll get through it. It's another variance request for Mountain Forest, and it's a little bit of a dispute.
Yep.
But
But we can't discuss it too much till it's actually advertised, but there will be a meeting.
yeah, and then what about the town advisory meeting?
Oh,
They would.
Oh, yep. The town advisory meeting is scheduled for February 5th, right?
February 5th.
And that'll be in Rossville at 6:30 PM. There in the pavilion at the park. And any and all of our various board members are more than welcome to come sit in. The towns will select their representative to the APC. They also usually do central dispatch and the waste district. But then we also usually just have some general discussion, and sometimes it's interesting to listen to the things that they're wrestling with. It doesn't always relate to zoning. Sometimes it's just a unique opportunity where one of them will express a problem and another town clerk will be like, oh, we tried this. But I think it communicates to them, that we do hear and see them, and they're an important part of who we serve when some of our members show up and take the time to interact and converse with them.
Andy, you came a couple years ago.
Yeah.
It's been a couple of years.
And there are several new town council.
There's been quite a bit of turnover actually across the four
Especially out
towns.
there in Rossville.
Chester's laughing. Yeah, Rossville definitely had a shakeup. And we've got 2 new town clerks too, which doesn't seem, I mean, obviously they don't vote, but we actually see more impact with new town clerks than we necessarily do with new board members.
I actually
But
got 3.
we do have 3. Yep, I forgot. We have 3 new town clerks. So the thing with town clerks is really they keep their boards on track, you know, much like we do for you guys. They do all the organization and the heavy grunt work and the lifting. And a town board tends to be as organized as their clerk is or is not. And so when you're new, like any job, like there's a learning curve you have to get through. So, so I think all of those town clerks are going to be there as well. So I think it's important for them too to kind of see how it works.
Very good.
Thank you for remembering that.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I was hungry.
Nope, I don't think so.
No,
Next
that's-
meeting
Alright.
is February the
5th,
27th.
next meeting.
That's our next BZA meeting.
next meeting.
Look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, we're adjourned.
Oh.